What's up? What's up? What's up? It's your man, Destiny Dan. Grand blessings, victorious Outcast tribe. I am excited to be with you today. Man, do we have a fabulous show for you today. But I want you to know that we are in position to change the game this year. And you know why? Because we're going to evolve and we're going to develop. Amen? Excuse me, I'm a pastor. I got to throw an amen in there, here and there. Listen, if someone offered you a master class for professional, personal, or spiritual development, would you make yourself available? I hope so, because that's what we're doing here each month for the phenomenal value of free. So DM your friends, let them know that the new season of the Victorious Outcast video podcast is about to begin. The place where wisdom gets paid forward and you leave better than you came, with life hacks and personal, professional, spiritual leadership and entrepreneur tips. We got some theology, psychology, and just some practical tools that will help you take your next steps forward to the destiny that God has provided for you and live our best lives. And did I mention the cost is free? So now for a quick public announcement. Oye man, listen to me here. We here at the Victorious Outcast video podcast are moving from potential to power and being the change that we want to see in the world. You see, we agree with my injustice fighter and colleague, Oklahoma attorney Demario Solomon Simmons, in that there is too much inequality, poverty, and injustice in the world that has only gotten emboldened in the past couple of years. Folks determined to stay ignorant and believe the lies being fed to them by fake media and leaders in a fake nation, if you will, as if they had no responsibility for the dysfunction of this nation. For instance, living poor and being a person of color in this nation is by design. Be clear, a design that is constructed to increase those same folks of color the likelihood of going to prison due to higher discriminatory practices like redlining us into limitation while illegally moving themselves into more power. And in having that ill gotten power, it can therefore suppress our votes and target us in our neighborhoods for more police contact, unjust systems, and it's not because we commit more crimes. No, it is because the narratives are false being told about people of color being less than. So many start to believe it, even ourselves. So I challenge you today not to let anyone unfairly and unjustly stigmatize our people and communities as innately criminal or violent by the media, politicians, or even police departments. Please do not repeat the racist talking point of black on black crime, because that's not a real thing, as crime is crime, and most crimes are committed by the people who are in close proximity to us, meaning that white people commit crimes against white people and Latinos against Latinos, etc., etc. So I further challenge you to boldly and consistently challenge the system and any entity that slanders our people and our community. Now, with justice on our minds, I would like to transition on into the podcast to remind you of why I am so excited today. You see, our February guest is not just a Black History guest, because I am of the mindset that every day is an opportunity to celebrate Black history and our great achievements. Furthermore, the core philosophy of the movement, which is The Truth Unlimited, is to share the truth unlimitedly and have lives that are lived out loud, inspired, intelligent, intentionally, and unapologetically. With that being said, research from the Opportunity Agenda reveals that stories of our lived experiences are more susceptible to be received than just data. Uh, it invokes more empathy and it changes hearts and minds. And that's what our next guest is up to. As the nation grapples with the fierce urgency of empathy and understanding and an aversion to the truth, in addition to lacking the desire to critically think, our guest today is the antidote to stinking thinking and limited possibility. In my opinion, he is the balm of Gilead of the community when it comes to correcting mindsets and engaging positive life elevation and development. He's here today, believe me. He is the co author with Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and author Nick Childs of the best selling book, I Too Am America, on loving and leading Black men and boys. The book that provides readers insight, information, experience, and inspiration that humanizes the stories of Black men and boys while offering strategic recommendations. That's right, he gets strategic up in this book on how we should move from radical reckoning to racial resolution. That's what we're doing here today. We are not fooling around, we are not messing around. We are sharing graciously lessons of leadership, love, and sacrifice for the world to see. With talented co author Nick Childs, this page of the incredible book invites you to examine the peril and promise of our men's lives while uplifting our call to action and kindle our hope. Yet there's no fluff in this book. Instead, it challenges us to read this memoir expose and analyze ways to confront the uncertainty that faces Black men and boys in this nation by paying forward wisdom to make our world a better place. Dear family, our guest today as a speaker, author, and advocate for leaders who want to improve the lives of young people, particularly Black men and boys, is also a husband, a father that brings all of himself to his calling. For almost 15 years, he has served as Chief Executive Officer of the Campaign for Black Male Achievement, CBMA, a national membership organization committed to improving the lives and outcomes of Black men and boys. Prior to CBMA, he held down for more than 2 decades experiences as youth development professional, community builder, and advocate for children's and family. 10 years as program director of Harlem Children's Zone, launching its fitness and nutrition center. He also led in the capacity of executive director of the Dome Project, director of youth ministries at First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens in Somerset, New Jersey, creative communities director for National Guild for Community School of Arts and New York Vice President of Mentor, the National Mentoring Program, winner of the Key of the City of Louisville, Black Enterprises B Modern Man of the Year, Charles H. Revson Fellowship at Columbia University, and named Ebony Magazine's Power 100 in 2016, just to name a few. Ladies and gentlemen in Victorious Outcast tribe, put your hands together for husband, father, friend, global mentor, author, cultural community leader, curator of the cause, and prophetic voice of Black men and boys, Mr. Shawn Dove. Woohoo! Woohoo!
Wow.
Woohoo! There he is.
Pastor Dan, Destiny Dan, that is the most illuminating, uplifting, inspiring introduction of myself that I have ever experienced. I want to bottle that, listen to that, and watch that every morning. I had to just, give myself a round of applause. And I often talk about, we can't wait for anybody to give us a standing ovation, right? That we have to look in the mirror every morning and give ourselves a standing ovation. And from the bottom of my heart, the time, the effort, and the energy you put into that introduction, my man, thank you.
My name is Reverend Rodriguez, and I co-sign this message. Yeah, man, we are often surprised when we take our accomplishments and tie them together in a stylistic way that allows us to illuminate ourselves. That's the best kind of self-care, to understand that
Yes.
we journeyed and accomplished some stuff. Huh?
And you know why it's important? So, one, just thank you for this platform. One of my mission mantras is that we must become the masters of our own media. And in this day and age, and with technology, and we are public with phones, we are publishers, right? We are media makers, and this podcast platform that you've created, I'm grateful for, so that we're able to tell our own stories and become masters of our own media. So thank you for that. And I also just wanted just to lift up because the truth, right? And the theme, the truth. One of the things I often say, brother, is that we are infinitely more favored than we are flawed. But the one that we give our attention to is what grows. And so that introduction and doing it, celebrating me and allowing me to celebrate myself is so powerful because I don't know about you, but I have a voice that pops up in my head that wants to tell me otherwise, right? That, you ain't really done all that much. You ain't all of that. Don't believe the hype. And we must be intentional with, because that voice doesn't go away, right? The voice of the enemy does not go away. Jesus came out of of his time in wilderness, and Satan tried to tempt him, and Jesus could not be tempted. But it said that the enemy left only to return at a more opportune time, and so we have to be vigilant. And so you just inspired me by that introduction, brother. So I look forward to getting that in my morning mission fuel rotation.
That's good. I'm glad to hear it. We often surrender our lives to being servant leaders, so much so that we don't always take the time to rejuvenate ourselves, both spiritually and physically and psychologically. And so, any opportunity that I get to big up my brothers, I'm going to do it. So, how are your family and your wife Desiree and the dove nest and
That's right.
your
That's
kids
right.
Mia, Maya, Cameron, and Caleb, your twins? How's everyone doing? What are they up to?
Everyone is doing well, and I appreciate the research that you did for this interview. Uh, what I like to say right now, we are in the season when we're all adulting up in here in the Dove Nest. My wife Desiree and I, we have been together for 28 years. Four children. Nia, who is 26, and is actively with her partner doing some apartment searching, right? And she is threatening to move out by April, right? And so she's planning on leaving the Dove Nest, and just grateful for her, and also grateful for her showing me that an empty nest someday is possible. Her younger sister Maya, she is working at a Stop and Shop, and finding her way, right, and figuring out now where she wants to grow and blossom. And my twin boys, Cameron and Caleb, they're 19 and they're students at Middlesex Community College here in Central New Jersey, and finding their way. And so like I said, we're all adulting. My wife is a nurse practitioner. with a specialist in infectious disease. So you
Oh,
can just imagine during the pandemic how harrowing and on the front lines that has been for her. And she continues to put up with me, right? And so I don't know what I did in a former life, right? I know I didn't do anything in this present life to deserve that much empathy, forgiveness, and understanding. And I'm doing good, brother. I always say, look, I woke up this morning, so it's been a great day. We are meeting each other in a season. I am beginning my third act of my leadership life journey.
nice.
The pandemic, and particularly last year, was kind of an intermission season for me. I was sharing with you, 2022 is my 60th year. I turned 60 in September, September 25th. And I thought as a young man, 60 was old, that I would be shopping for my rocking chair, getting ready to push cruise control. And the curtain has just gone up on my third act. And so I'm grateful for all God is doing and leading me. And some of that is the uncomfortability of being and feeling brand new. Have a new book. I'm an author. I too am a miracle on loving and leading Black men and boys. I've just started a new job with a venture philanthropy firm called New Profit in the role of managing
Wow, wow.
partner. And so there is like newness in this season. And what I will say is this, and then I'll give you an opportunity to get a word in edgewise. Um, there is this quote by Arundhati Roy, who is a renowned Indian of the pandemic. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. And in this intermission season that I have come out of and passing through this portal of my world anew, I realized that so much of my second act was about proving, performing, seeking external and extrinsic validation for doing. And in retrospect, we know that the pandemic has been devastating, particularly for our brown and black communities, right? We've lost so many. And for those of us that continue to survive it, there is like so much to be grateful for and so many lessons. And uh, the pandemic provided me, Dan, with a period uh, of pause, a period of introspection, a period to go within and do the necessary work to derive and focus value, validation internally, intrinsically, and not externally and extrinsically. And with that, I'm a work of art, but I'm just excited what God is doing in my life and just using me to be a blessing, to be an influence, and to inspire others.
That's cool. The pandemic is definitely operating on some biblical principles in that it's shining a light, illuminating and pulling some covers off of some covert activity, so much so that we're able to develop strategies to combat an open type of warfare that is occurring in this particular season. A little bit different from how we grew up, where folks would hold back on their commentary, their negative commentary about who they think we are and how they can challenge us in our very existence. But what was it like growing up in New York City for you? Were there any particular highlights that allowed you to discover your ability to kind of each one teach one, to kind of become the mentor that you are?
Wow, great. Well, grew up in the best city in the world, New York City. Uh, Lived in every borough except for Staten Island, right? And there's some debate. Sorry to give shade to the Staten Islanders on Staten Island as a fifth borough. I can't talk about my upbringing in New York City without first talking about my amazing mom, Deanna, who immigrated to the United States from Jamaica at 18 years old, and delivered me to the world when she was 22. Single mom. She was a dancer, she was a seamstress, and I watched her sacrifice her creative skills as a single mom, her creative ambitions to provide home and covering for her only child son, Shawn Dove, right? And my dad, Bernard Dove, from Brooklyn, grandparents on his side from South Carolina and North Carolina. Never woke up one day being able to say good morning, Dad, right? My mother and father were not married, did not live together, but got to know my dad later on in life and develop a relationship with him. And so, wow, you asked me so many transformational moments growing up in New York. But one of the things early on in my formative early years, we were living in the South Bronx on 174th Street and Bryan Avenue. And my mother didn't have childcare, right? She worked in Queens, and she found in Harlem um, Big Mama type, Lillian Smith. And Lillian Smith took care of other children along with her granddaughter. She was a quintessential entrepreneur with her childcare business, but she also ran numbers. She ran numbers with Nicky Barnes' father, Roy Barnes. And if you ever saw the movie Lackawanna Blues with Hill Harper, Dan, that was what my early experience was like. There were boarders in the house. This is one of these long Harlem apartments, 119th Street and Lenox Avenue. I like to say that I have a PhD from UCLA, the university on the corner of Lenox Avenue in Harlem. And growing early, 60s, going into the early 70s, yes, there was violence. Yes, there was drug abuse, but there was this real sense of community. If I strayed from Lenox Avenue down to 7th Avenue, adults knew who I was. And they identified me as, hold up, that's one of Lillian Smith's kids. What you doing down here? Get your butt back on Lenox Avenue, right? You know you're not supposed to be down here. Long before a text, long before a tweet, by the time I got back to Lenox Avenue, guess what? She knew that I had ventured beyond my boundaries. But that was such a glorious upbringing for me, playing freeze tag on Lenox Avenue. You remember the day you put your feet into the circle, your sneakers, PF Flyers, and heads and skippies, and doing the engine number 9 going down Chicago line. It was
Red light, green light,
running back, right?
spelling.
Playing Scully's, playing was it Hot Peas and Butter, right? In games
Yeah,
like
AKA Run, Catch, and Kiss.
that. On now, right? And so I stayed with my godmother during the week, and on the weekends I was with my mother, in the Bronx, and my mother shipped me to camp every summer, right? And so my early years, I had the experience of the city, the concrete, jungle, so to speak, and deep experiences in nature at camp during the summers. And one of the camps I went to was called Dominican Camp in Poughkeepsie, New York, on the Hudson, where I learned to swim. I was water skiing at 8, 9 years old, right? Bullfrogs, poison ivy, and all that type of experience. And so much of my life has been that blend and balance of city and nature, the boardroom and the block, the corner and city hall. And so that was a transformational experience. Moving
That
downtown,
that that balance is so critical to developing young men in terms of being able to extract yourself through parents or otherwise out of the city, the hustle and the bustle and the busyness into a more relaxed atmosphere. Now, all our bad habits are not going to fall off, but Poughkeepsie did a little work in me as well. I left Queens at 16 years old to
okay,
go to college up in that area, and I developed as a young man. It took a while, but I developed as a young man in that neighborhood, and it wasn't till I spent a couple of decades up there that I was able to come back down to Queens a little bit more mature and start adulting in a manner that was pleasing to God. So I'm
mm,
grateful for that.
was that
That
Maris? Was that Maris? When
no, actually, they had a radio station up at Dutchess College,
okay,
and
excellent.
I actually worked at Marist, but I and had a lot of friends at New Paltz. We used to call New Paltz the eighth wonder of the world
Oh
because
man,
a good portion of Queens and Long Island were right across the river at New Paltz College,
yep,
having
Sweet
the
Newport, yep.
most amazing parties. And then there was Vassar, and I wound up. Working for over a decade at the Culinary Institute, and that's where I cut my chops as a media coordinator. But
Wow.
I digress.
No, no,
Who
it's
in
all part of the story, right? So I would imagine that you spent some time at Mohawk Mountain Retreat in Newport. So we can talk
yes,
about that story. But building the campaign for Black Male Achievement, we'll talk. I'm sure we're going to be talking about that. Um, so many retreats at that mountain resort, right? And the power of being able to retreat, right? And there's this notion of the power of full engagement, right? And we think that, oh, managing our time, managing our money, yes, very important, but managing our energy and the
Ooh,
ability, right? The powerful engagement says, no, life is not a marathon. We just keep running. It's a series of sprints, rest, relax, reflect, repeat. And our ability to retreat, whether it is physically or like this space I'm in, this is my a study, but it is also my sanctuary in my house to be
nice.
able to have that quiet time for prayer, meditation, reflection. And too often, particularly growing up in cities, and we don't have an opportunity as growing adults or even adults to step back and reflect, right? And so I digress, but that mountain house, Mohawk Mountain House, was a lot of revelations for me.
Who in your life helped you pivot into a new direction in your young adulthood as you became on your path toward garnering your education and developing your skill set and learning what you were made and called to do? Who were some of the people or one of the people who really helped you to pivot in the right direction as you were coming up? And then we'll get to the meat of the matter
Yeah.
going forward.
And so, just very quickly, Dan, definitely not one, right? I'm high maintenance, so there was a series and succession of loving, caring individuals, starting with my mom, Deanna. I mentioned my godmother, Lel. My godparents on my father's side, Lucy and Charner Dove, lived in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, that just demonstrated unconditional love, that I was valued, right? Especially when I was in their presence, I knew and felt that I was the most important person in the world. And then there were coaches. I remember playing for St. Matthew's and St. Timothy's basketball team on the Upper West Side. Coach Norman in my early b-baller days. And sometimes these pivots just happen in a moment. Coach Norman, and I will never, ever forget this, 75 maybe. And it was a basketball game. We're in the CYO League. Might have been the first game. And I was going up for a jump shot on the extended foul line on the left side. I remember being in motion, and I could hear Coach Norman yelling from the side before I released the ball with such unadulterated confidence. It's good. That's good. I missed the shot. But running up the court, the feeling was I wasn't thinking about the missed shot. I was thinking about, wow, he believes I'm a better jump shooter than I believe, right? And that always stuck with me. Meeting John Simon at the Dome Project on the Upper West Side, I got involved through their basketball team. And Dome Project was on 80th Street between Weston and Broadway. My corner was 80th Street and Amsterdam Avenue when I was like trying to sell loose joints and came up with catchy slogans. I know you don't know nothing about loose joints, but pass me by.
We all had our entrepreneurial efforts,
That's right. That's right.
don't you
And
know?
and so just a series of folks throughout my life. But I do think that the Dome experience was a pivotal one. And I remember one day John Simon challenging me. He said to me, Shawn, you have potential. You can do amazing things if you start spending less time on the corner of 80th Street and Amsterdam Avenue and more time at the Dome Project. I didn't know that he knew that I was on the 80th. It was 2 blocks away. Come on,
Sure.
Shawn. He passed the corner every day on his way home. And I got involved in the basketball team, got my first job through the Dome Project, got involved in youth activism through the Dome Project, met other mentors and other coaches. And so that was very pivotal. And I came back years later to be the executive director of this same youth program at 14 years old that I walked into to play basketball. And one other thing that I'll mention with John Simon, and there's a series, we share a mentor in Alfonso Wyatt, right, in my later years. But one of the distinct things I remember before we got on the basketball court, we were required before practice to inner circle the basketball team to read out loud. And a couple of books I remember reading, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. But the book that had a transformative impact in my life was Man Child in the Promised Land. And we read that book in community. And we went to practice, still went to the corner and hung out, smoking joints, drinking Old English. And the thing about it, we found ourselves talking about the characters in the book, Sonny, Roz, the Exhorter, and with, my love for reading. And my mother had books, in the house and developed a love for reading. And I write about also in the book, like, the power of the right word at the right time, that at an early age. So when I was living with Lel, she had lots of company. My room was the playroom. It was kind of a communal room where I slept. I had this magnet of the United States on the wall. And I was in the bed, and these two ladies thought that I was asleep, and they were talking about me, right? And they were talking about the magnet. And one of the ladies said, Shawn did this. He loves to read, and said it in a proud way. I didn't know that I love to read, but in that moment, I received that. I don't know their names. I couldn't tell you, but in that moment, it just tells you the power of the right word at the right time and mentoring, and it works in both ways. We can speak life into our young people, into ourselves, or we can speak death, deficiency, and doubt, and division, and a whole bunch of other dirty D words that we can come up with. But so yeah,
You
a whole
actually are answering questions that I was going to ask you, but you are so intuitive. I was going to ask, what do you get out of mentoring, and would you recommend mentoring for others? Obviously, as servant leaders, of course we would, but specifically and maybe particularly, could you add a couple of more things to the list in terms of the satisfaction that you get from mentoring, and how it's helped you, and how it has fed you as well?
yes, yes, and so you know, at its core, but at our core as human beings, I believe, we all want the same thing, no matter race, ethnicity, geography. We all want love, safety, and belonging, right? And to me, mentoring in its various forms provides a vehicle and a channel for all three of those: love, safety, and belonging, right? And sometimes the safety part is just covering, the ability to be vulnerable. And what I tell folks and how I practice, yes, we want to share our success stories. I think it's more valuable as a mentor that we share vulnerably where we have stumbled, where we have fallen, how we have been able to get up, forgive ourselves. And mentors are trusted guides, right?
Mhm.
And showing you where the rocks are, learning from lessons, and quite often, particularly during my adolescence, the hard way. Even though at times mentors tried to guide me and do this, and just being able to learn from the stories of mentors. And then I've had mentors, and I do the same. One of the things I love to do is I get a thrill out of making connections, right? And mentoring someone, and then introducing that young person or adult, right, to someone else, and then watching just that relationship blossom. And something
Yeah,
that you said,
Dr. Alfonso, he also is one of my mentors, and he also paid forward a lot of his wisdom and understanding on the experiences that he had with his journey. And it is interesting that another mentor is mentioned in your book, and it is Susan L. Taylor.
oh
Is
yes,
Folks know that she's a best-selling author and founder of the National Cares Mentoring Movement, and the former chief editor of Essence for like 27 years. And she said about your book that you co-wrote, that it is about love. Mm. And that her hope is that your divinely timed work will inspire folks to lead the change we need to see for Black men and boys. She also wrote the forward of your book, and that's huge, brother. Big, big respect. What significance does the book's title play in the reader's life?
So not only the title, I Too Am America, but the subtitle on loving and leading black men and boys. And Nick Childs and I, we borrowed the title from the iconic poem by the Harlem Renaissance writer and poet Langston Hughes, I Too, where he tells the story of you tell me to go eat in the kitchen when company comes. I am the darker brother. And he concludes the poem by saying, you know, that's okay. I will eat and grow strong while I am in the kitchen. And then one day you will see how beautiful I am and you'll be ashamed. And the paradox of that, and he wrote that poem in 1926, and that was Langston's poetic prophecy in 1926. But in 2022, I am not quite sure if America writ large is capable of feeling shame. Maya Angelou says there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. And what we are seeing right now in the country and the political culture wars is the continuation of America not being able to fully put the mirror up front and own its story. And so the title is really about I Too Am America, is that we are not waiting. We need not wait for anyone to deem value on us. I am not waiting as a black man for America to feel ashamed about its treatment, its discrimination, its oppression, and racist policies against black and brown and poor people in this country. I am looking in the mirror and saying, Shawn, I love you, right? And so the stories in the book, yes, there's stories about loving and leading black men and boys, but it's also a story of self-love. And let me tell you, the subtitle is on loving and leading black men and boys. That is an ongoing journey, right? It's not the how-to. It's not like a how-to book, right? And I think that the power, and you intimated this when you quoted the opportunity agenda and their research, is that stories evoke connection. They invoke emotion, uh, empathy. And I think at the heart of the book, it really humanizes, the stories of black men and boys, right? Not just my own, but others. We follow Jamari in Detroit, Romero in Oakland. And I Too Am America is really about this really shining a light on the paradox of promise and peril of black men and boys in America, right?
How
It
did
is
you know? How did you know that your story would be received when you paid it forward? Was it because you had to get it out of your system, like it was cathartic or therapeutic? Or did you really recognize that your writing was going to resonate relevantly and your experiences were going to shine a light on someone going through similar circumstances? Did you know that your story would connect so nicely, like a puzzle, to other folks and their coming of age experience as a black man and a black youth?
so great question. So I intuitively and instinctively knew that it would resonate, right? And I write about my recovery story in the book as well. That as an executive director of the Dome Project, finally surrendering to my addiction to drugs and alcohol, and going into a treatment in a therapeutic community called Veritas Truth, Veritas Therapeutic Community. And one of the things that I learned during my recovery journey, attending Narcotics Anonymous, was the power of telling our stories. One of the messages and themes is that the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is beyond parallel. And so much of that happened through our stories. And throughout my life, from reading, from pastors, from in the early 90s, listening to Les Brown and Dennis Kimbrough and George Frazier, motivational speakers. Gil Scott Heron was a hero of mine, and he told stories through music. And so that resonated with me. And so I have been attempting to, poetry. I was a poet. Poetry I write saved my life, right, in early adolescence. So I've been telling a story for some time. I've been sharing my story for some time. And I will tell you this, Destiny Dan. One of the things I'm most proud of is I have not asked one person, what did you think about the book? Did you like the book? What are your thoughts? Which is a change for me. Pre pandemic, seeking external and extrinsic validation, I'd have been, did you get the book? What did you think? Did you like it? Right? The praise addict and junkie would have been the seeking praise. And when I realized that, I said, wow, Shawn, this is an offering, right? And it may not be for everybody. In fact, it isn't for everyone. And so, a couple things I will share, two things related to the story. Right before the pandemic, during a retreat for the Campaign for Black Male Achievement uh, at Mohonk Mountain Resort, the facilitator, Melvin Miller, you ever be in a room and you hear a word, you're not the only one in the room, but you're like, this word was for me.
You
And
talking to me? You talking
that's
to me?
right. You've been reading my journal, and he said, you have nothing to prove, only gifts to share. And that just resonated, right? And so I, you know, transitioned from, okay, I got to write a bestseller. I got to write something to prove. Just share your story, Shawn, and let God do the rest. But then there was, so folks have been reaching out to me and saying, man, thank you. This resonates with me. And there were portions of the book where I contemplated, oh man, do I leave this in? Is this too vulnerable? And I write about, as a child, being a bedwetter. And I tell the story while playing on Lenox Avenue between 119th Street and 118th Street with my friends. My godmother put my pea stain sheets out on the fire escape, right, to embarrass me into correction, all right, and the game stopped. I don't know what we were playing at the time. Might have been playing freeze tag or whatever. And they stopped and they pointed up. They knew the playroom. I had the fire escape. And it was a moment of like ridicule and shame. And I knew my godmother loved me and cared for me, but that was her strategy of like, this is how we're going to deal with Shawn's bedwetting.
Tough love, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had a conversation with a brother who read the book. That's my age, right? I'm gonna be 60 this year. And this brother said to me in his late 50s, thank you for writing that because that was my story too. And the ability to connect through story. While he was telling me this, I just sensed and felt through a Zoom the some shame, just easing, right? And so um, that was a power. So that's the power of a story. And I think it's also important to note in the book that my ethos is really to build community and provide platforms for others to tell their stories. And in the last portion of the book, we have many manifestos of about a dozen leaders, cross sector, multiracial leaders, multi generational leaders telling their story, right? And so um, it has just been amazing. And I tried to write a book and publish a book in the late 90s. I had Marie Brown, a pioneering literary agent who I met through Susan Taylor. I had a book called The Graduation Gift, a postgraduate guide to purposeful living. Met with the editor at Simon and Schuster, and she got back to me. When I left the office at the end of our meeting, she says, "This is amazing. I can see you on Oprah." And when I walked onto the out of the office building on Sixth Avenue, I was walking on air. But she called me in 2 weeks and she said, "Look, we just had an editorial meeting. We love this book concept, but look, the industry is changing, and we're looking to publish more celebrity authors that have a following. And this is even before social media. And so we're going to pass on your book deal." If I really wanted to publish back then, I would have self-published like I just did. But I was okay with someone saying you are publishable. We would publish your story. We would publish your book instead of going all the way and publishing it. And I've started a youth newspaper called Harlem Overheard at the Harlem Children's Zone, elevating the voices of young people. I started a news public magazine called Proud Papa for African American fathers. But this book, and I think the message is that sometimes, someone needs to hear this that's watching and listening, Dan. Sometimes we are ahead of our dreams, right? And some of us may be wondering about and thinking about our dreams that are dead and that are like roadkill along the journey. And there are dreams that we can go and breathe life into and give mouth to mouth resuscitation to your dreams, CPR. That sometimes, look, if God downloaded it into you, the Holy Spirit put it inside you, it's possible, right? And it might not be at that time. And so that's what this book has been for me, and it really has opened up the creative a birth a canal, right? And we had a whole team of what I call midwives to help me give birth to this book. And
Yeah, it's
it's
amazing how when we get into an atmosphere of gratitude and we get the need for affirmation pruned away from us, our dreams start to flourish. I remember riding an elevator, being a functional substance abuser in my late 20s, early 30s. And a coworker who I was close to saw the condition of my condition and said, "Yo, you look like Ish." And it just sent a light bulb moment to my spirit. And it gave me enough motivation to get off that elevator, do a Dan check in the mirror of the bathroom, and say it's
Mhm.
now or never. And I walked into my boss's office because I knew they had an employee assistance program, and I laid it on the line. And within that next month, I was delivered from substances, and that was over 30 years ago.
One day at
So
a
I
time, right?
know,
Yes, yes.
yes, I can understand how sharing what we've been through can set some folks free. Matter of fact, I understand that you may have set somebody high up free. Is it true you were President Obama's inspiration for the Brothers Keeper initiative? Or did you play a part in that?
Well, yeah, I play a part in it. I played a part in it, right? So I will not claim that I was his inspiration, but I had a catalytic role in helping to shape the decision to launch my Brother's Keeper initiative. And I write about this in chapter 9 in the book. I remember driving and receiving, I was leading the Open Society Foundation's campaign for Black male achievement at the time. And I got a text from Kierna Mayo, who at the time was the editor in chief of Ebony Magazine. And she texted me, "The president is looking for you." And I was driving and I was like, what is she talking
What you
about?
talking about, Willis?
Yeah, right. What are you talking about, Willis? And I got home and turned on CNN and saw the clip of the president when he was making it, because a week prior, George Zimmerman was acquitted for the murder of Trayvon Martin. And this was the summer of 2013, right? And one of the books, again, this is an attempt. Back in 2014, I was working with Joshua Dubois. We were attempting, or I was attempting, to write a book called The Summer of the Verdict and the Speech. And it was this summer, right? So a week after the acquittal, the president made a speech, right? An impromptu speech. And when Trayvon Martin was first murdered by George Zimmerman, President Barack Obama said, "If I had a son, he would have looked like Trayvon Martin." And in this speech, he said, "I was Trayvon Martin 35 years ago," and explicitly said and talked about his own lived experience as a Black man walking past cars and hearing the door locked. And he challenged the nation to find a way to shift how Black men and boys were perceived in this nation. And so, due to the work that I was leading at the Campaign for Black Male Achievement, relationships with folks in the White House, the next week we were in the East Wing of the White House strategizing and spent a lot of time with a bunch of other folks. But leading up to this September meeting, when, you know, the message here also is, with servant leadership, it's not about titles, it's not about positions, it's about serving, right? I was part of a meeting in the Roosevelt Room in the White House in September 2013, where I was probably the most junior person in title in the room. It was a bunch of CEOs and foundation presidents. When we walked into the room, they had my name tag directly across from President Obama's seat. And this was the meeting when we sealed the deal. So, there is like history belongs to those who tell it, right? And so, yes, I was a catalyst. There may be other folks telling, like, yeah, I was the inspiration. And I have matured enough to, what's important is, like, I don't care who gets the credit, is I don't want the credit, I want the change.
Right,
You
as long as the work is done.
work
But it
was
certainly gives new meaning to the saying, speaking truth to power, kind of like Jeffrey Kennedy. He said that the barriers to success that the Black man faces has been in plain sight for decades. So it's particularly heartening to see a movement like yours taking shape. And so, how do you specifically craft and address those challenges that change the odds for many disenfranchised populations in America, with white supremacy being unmasked and the clear evidence of it in our government? How can monitoring the political climate of this nation help us in terms of Black male achievement?
So my initial response is somewhat counterintuitive to the question, and I would say to any leader, racial justice, social justice warrior who is seeking to make change to one, you got to work harder on yourself than you do on your cause, your mission, or whatever. That self care is number one. Self compassion is number one. I know that we are talking about mentoring, right? And so, three things I say that a leader must always have and utilize. And yes, one is a mentor, mentors. Two is the second is a executive life coach, right? And three is a therapist, right? So the first thing I say, you got to work harder on yourself than you do on your issue or your cause. We are battling centuries of systemic racism, right? And so, Destiny Dan, to fight a system, you must have a systemic approach, right? And understanding as a leader, what is it that is uniquely yours to do? I had to discover and remind myself on a daily basis, Shawn, everything that you could do is not everything you should do. And so when I talk about a systemic problem, a systemic oppression has to be dealt with systemically. When we are looking at black men and boys and our boys, not only do you have to work on education, right? Because if you are focusing on solely education and our boys are graduating high school, they're going to college, but they can't get jobs because of employment discrimination. Their communities racked with violence, police brutality. So we need to organize and find ways to be in alignment across a number of issues politically, right? And so I will say that yes, we need political power, right? But political power alone is not going to be our salvation as Black people in this nation. We need education, but education alone is not going to be our salvation. Social mobility, right? And we cannot have the question without economic mobility, our ability to close the racial wealth gap. And when we look at the disparities in wealth, um, that is like a huge because resources, it takes a lot of resources to leverage social impact. But when we're talking about black men and boys, there's a few things that I would say that we need to strategically focus on. One is just really elevating and building the brand of black male achievement. And what do I mean by that? One, what I really appreciated with the Open Society Foundation when I joined and launched the campaign for Black Male Achievement, that we decided that we were going to unapologetically, explicitly name Black men and boys in response to the historical anti Blackness and unique challenges and oppression of Black men and boys, right? Uh, and when I say elevate the brand of Black Male Achievement, when we came out with the name Black Male Achievement, because it was a different name, one of the first things I did was change the name, right? I didn't do it by myself, right? Worked with some folks, we had some samples, but we came up with a campaign for Black Male Achievement. And it wasn't about disconnected dads, it wasn't about marginalized men, it was aspirational, right? We had black male and achievement in the same sentence, in the same title. A lot of folks could not get their progressive people could not get their heads around black male and achievement in the same sentence because we were so used to this deficit language, the criminalization of black men and boys. This is brother you need to get on your show. His name is Travian Shorters. He leads Be Me community and is really leading this movement for asset-based language around Black people. And what it says is that why do we have to we're not ignoring the challenges and the problems that we face as a people. But the moment we lead with and identify people uh, as their problems, as the worst thing that they've done, um, it just there's a race to like the poverty Olympics. What about leading with aspirations and dreams? So number one, build a brand of Black male achievement. Number two, strategic partnerships, right? I think one of the gifts that I have from my lived experience is the ability to balance and make connections from the block to the boardroom, from the corner to city hall, that it's going to take strategic partnership and cross sector leadership. It can't just happen with not for profits in the social sector. You need philanthropy at the table. You need government at the table. You need the private sector at the table. You need the faith community at the table, right? And the challenge of getting a solidarity of cross sector leadership at the table is perhaps the biggest thing. So, one, building a brand of Black male achievement, an asset framed language and narrative. Two is strategic partnerships, right? And number three is investing in leaders and organizations that are closest to the challenges and the problems. One of my mission mantras is that there's no cavalry coming to save the day, right? In Black communities, we are the iconic leaders that we have been waiting for, curators of the change we're seeking to see. Too often, particularly in the philanthropic and social sector, we want to paratroop into communities with no relationships with prescriptions for change. The solutions are already in the communities. We need to, yes, provide resources, help build resources, identify the assets that are already in the communities, and so many times, like, be of support, right? Get out of the way, right? And we also need to build capacity in the pipeline of leaders. God, so
That's
quickly,
another thing I liked about your book is how you gave case studies and exposés of these young men, one from Detroit, one from Oakland, and you
yes,
mentioned the challenge of the reports that often come out about the disparities and the challenges of the young men without listing the triumphs that our boys and men are accomplishing. And typically, they achieve without any recognition. And so, black males in America need the affirming and the illuminating of what we have done right and what we are accomplishing
mhm,
and what the resources are. Because it's much better to tell an individual's story with the triumphs in it than swirl around the crushing negatives that will stifle them. And in that context, of that type of statement, can you tell me how, as we move toward a close, that we can motivate our communities toward success? You gave us 3 points there, but how do we stay motivated while wrestling the dichotomy of peril and promise?
wow. So
Because
no
it's going to
coincidence.
take some strategy, and I know you have
Yes,
some.
yes. So it's definitely going to take strategy across political, economic, educational, health, health equity. But I was going to say it's no coincidence that we are having this conversation. We're coming up on the last week of Black History Month, right? One is for us, to never forget to remember that we are indeed privileged, you and I, to be on a Zoom in our rooms and having this conversation and remembering those that gave their lives for us to be in the privileged positions that we are in, right? So that is critical. I remember the summer of 2016. I was fresh from a retreat. We were talking about retreats earlier in Greensboro, North Carolina, at the beloved Community Center. Nelson and Joyce Johnson are the founders. They're elders. And coming back home to New Jersey, refreshed, energized, and within a week, Alton Sterling was murdered by police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and then Philando Castile outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I had this moment, Destiny Dan. I was still clinging at that moment on this idealistic notion that on my watch, on my lifetime, that we would see the promised land, that we would see an end to racism. And yes, I have folks saying, you were still clinging to that, a reality. But in that moment and in that week, um, I was liberated with the reality and reckoning like, Shawn, this is not ending in your lifetime.
Mm.
But what is it that is yours to do while you are here? And for me, it's pouring into leaders, connecting leaders, investing in social entrepreneurs, community leaders, financially, spiritually, intellectually. And that is my calling, building community, connecting leaders. And so that is strategic. And I think one of the things that we have to, when we look at history, every time our leaders have stepped out of saying that this is just about race and not looking at economics and poor people and yes, civil rights, but also human rights. And we look at Fred Hampton when he began to step out of and be inclusive within the Black Panthers in Chicago with Latinos across town, the Chicanos, poor whites that were doing labor organizing. Oh, he's more of a threat now. Same thing with Dr. King as well, and beginning to step out of civil rights and looking at the military industrial complex, opposing the Vietnam War, organizing poor people, the Poor People's Campaign, become more dangerous, right? And so I would challenge, particularly in this polarized moment, where is there momentum for, yes, centering the lives and the purposes of Black people? And at the same time, how do we organize multi-generational, multi-racial coalitions that as long as we are divided, the change will never come. And so that certainly is a strategy in finding out what is uniquely yours to do. And we have a plethora of information out there and places for us to get involved. I think in New York City right now, where you reside, I just want to lift up Brother David Banks, who is the Chancellor of New York City's public schools under Mayor Eric Adams, a leadership and the opportunity to have humble yet strong servant leadership that spreads and lifts up others is what's needed right now.
Brother, I so appreciate you that you thought it not robbery to come spend this time with us here at the Victorious Outcast video podcast.
Oh, we closing? We just getting started. We closing? Oh, you got to bring back for part two.
Yes, most definitely, most definitely. But before you go, are there any last nuggets or anything in particular particular you would like our audience to take away in closing this special episode?
So if I can, I would like to read a poem from I Too America on loving and leading black men and boys. And this is a poem that I wrote in 1988. And when I look at this poem and why I had to go in the introduction, it reminded me that God seeded this in me long before I gave it birth. And the poem is called Poetry in Motion. And it goes like this. Whilst at Poetry in Motion, I stopped to look for a brother with ways to write a book. Arrange round me with a story to tell, a billion brothers who know all too well about unwritten words that unwillingly die before bred and bound and able to fly. Why do my brother's words wear weights of woe? My ears to the ground, I'm dying to know. We must give our words wings so they can sing a song for all brothers they will bring. The ability to dream, to fly, and to soar. It's to you, my brothers, these words are for. To give your words a life, you must sit and write. Your story.
You froze up a little bit, my brother. You're going to have to come back on part two and finish the poem. Well, we appreciate you, Brother Love and Brother Dove. We know where to reach you at Dove Soars. We are grateful for all that you have done in sharing with us some of the wisdom of the Black Male Achievement program, and also just the wisdom that you have journeyed throughout your travels with. We thank God for you, Brother Shawn Dove, and we thank God for you too. You, Victorious Outcast Tribe, we thank you for tuning in. I am your man, Destiny Dan, wishing you love, peace, and a powerful journey forward. All right? Catch some of this information as we leave out. God bless you.